The answer's already inside you. You got to stop. You got to look. You got to answer those hard questions. And when I say be a control freak, it's not white knuckling through life. It's taking back control of what you can. Things like your fitness, your nutrition, your rest, your sleep. But it's letting go of the things that are out of our control.
Our guest today is Beachbody super trainer and nutrition expert, Autumn Calabrese. She's creator of the breakthrough fitness programs 9-Week Control Freak, 21-Day Fix, 80-Day Obsession, and Ultimate Portion Fix. She's helped millions of people gain control of their nutrition. She's also the author of the best-selling Fixate cookbooks, and her latest book, Lose Weight Like Crazy, Even If You Have a Crazy Life, is available right now. And she's also the host of the Fixate Healthy Cooking Show with her brother, Bobby Calabrese, on Beachbody On Demand. And Autumn's perspective is one that I think for a lot of folks can be very helpful right now, because even with her new book, Even If You Have a Crazy Life, just really speaks volumes to what a lot of folks are dealing with. So really excited about this episode. Let's jump into this conversation with the incredible Autumn Calabrese.
How quick do you tell people that it's not COVID if you sneeze? I sneeze and I'm like, it's just my allergies. The wind blew wrong. I'm fine. Like, I'm so quick to defend the fact that I sneezed, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like, my nose tickled. Like, I can't believe I'm like,
don't worry. Is the nose tickle a crime? Oh my God, what is going on? Just basic human decency is kind of gone on the back burner.
Seriously.
Oh my gosh. Well, speaking of gone on the back burner, you and I, we had no idea when we met for the first time, like face to face. It was maybe 2-3 years ago at Beachbody.
Yeah, like 2 years.
And we found out of all the places in the United States, all the cities, all the high schools, we went to the same high school at the same time.
Yes.
And had no idea.
No idea. And here we are years later in another state.
Yeah.
And like,
in a dystopian world.
Yes.
But now getting to read your book, because I just assumed even from that conversation you were just from St. Louis, but it was, there was a much bigger story before that.
Yeah.
Growing up in Cleveland, right?
Cleveland, yes.
Shout
Born
out to
and raised.
Cleveland. And so now I know you and Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Yes.
Both being from Cleveland. That's about it. And
who else? That's about all we got.
Your story was just so incredible. Growing up, literally. First of all, your dad.
Bobby Cal.
Bobby Cal. Everybody knew Bobby Cal.
We should make
because
a movie.
He had the local pizza place.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about that, growing up in that environment?
Yeah, I grew up, like, I always describe it like if people have seen the movie A Bronx Tale, that's how I grew up. I grew up in like a mafia movie. For real. Like, the mafia was in our neighborhood. Like, it was a thing. You had to be careful. But like, we grew up a little Italian neighborhood. Everybody knew my dad. He owned the pizza place. We lived upstairs from it. So he owned the building, and the apartment upstairs was ours. So that's where we were. So dad would be downstairs working, and we'd be upstairs, school or whatever. And our whole family lived in the neighborhood. Like, my grandparents were a few blocks away. My aunt was a few blocks. We walked everywhere. We rode our bikes everywhere. Everybody knew him. You don't mess with Bobby Cal or Bobby Cal's kids. And like, they're like, the neighborhood had an eye on us because everybody knew him. Everybody loved my dad. He was like the good guy in the mafia movie. He wasn't in the mafia. He was like,
just to be clear,
he was like Robert De Niro was in A Bronx Tale. He was the good guy.
So Noah's swimming with the fishes.
He wasn't Chaz Palminteri.
Okay, all right. Just to be clear, thanks for clearing that up. And of course, growing up in that environment and having access to all the deliciousness, I'm sure that really, and this is, one of the things with Kristen said that we had, very similar, just having that access to that food, it's just a part of our lives. So talk a little bit about that, the culture around food, and obviously, the Italian culture. Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, that's just it. Like my grandparents are off the boat. Like, my grandparents were from Italy. Food is everything, like, in the Italian culture. It's like everything revolves around it. Sunday dinner at my grandma's house was like 15 to 20 of us every Sunday. My grandma was in the kitchen cooking, and it was pasta and meatballs, and the meatballs were fried in lard. In fact, if you ask my dad to this day, it is a crime that I don't cook my meatballs in lard. Like, he gets mad at me for it. well, you don't know anything about tradition. And I was like, I know your tradition's going to kill you. Like, Dad, can we just put olive oil? Is olive oil okay? But yeah, like everything revolved around food. And the one thing I'll say that was interesting though, is everything was made from scratch still. Like my grandma, more often than not, made the pasta. Like that's one of my brother's favorite things is handmade pasta. That's what he does because he's a chef. You know, the sauce was made from scratch. We always had salad at the end of the meal. A lot of times the bread was fresh from whatever the local bakery was. Even my dad's pizza, like he made the dough like by hand. Like we learned how to make pizza dough, kneading it with our hands and letting it rise. So while we had access to a lot of all of those foods, pastas and pizzas and subs, I think like I was, if you see pictures of me when I was a young kid, I was a really thin kid. Like, and I ate everything. I ate the pizza, I ate the pasta, I ate the subs, I ate the New York style cheesecake, but I was also very active. But I do remember as a teenager, when we left the Italian neighborhood, we moved to the suburbs. I no longer was super active. And we weren't actually living upstairs from my dad's restaurant anymore. We were now in the house, and my dad left to go to the restaurant. We had different food in the house. My dad was remarried at the time, and his wife was doing the grocery shopping. And all of a sudden, there was a lot more sort of easy, convenient, processed foods in the house, not so much the scratch foods.
Yeah.
And that's when I gained weight for the first time. I also went through puberty, but
right.
there was a change there in what I was eating.
That was a part of the book when I was like, because for you, it was 12 years old was the first time you kind of had this realization that like an awareness of your body not being the way that you wanted it to be, and you set out to lose weight. And of course, this is a challenge in our culture today more than ever because of our exposure, social media. Folks are always, we have a tendency towards comparison, the human mind. So it's just like on 1,000% now.
Yeah.
But you being 12 years old and having this like epiphany that, you know, my body weight, like I've gained weight and I want to do something about it. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because for some folks, just like a 12-year-old little girl shouldn't feel like that. You know, but for you, it's just like, this is reality, not just for you, but for so many people. And then can you talk about what you did in your attempt to lose weight when you had this epiphany?
So yeah, I was 12. I obviously was hitting puberty, and I had been so used to being the kid that one was super small, like tiny. I was skinny, and I could eat anything I wanted, and I never gained weight. So the fact that all of a sudden I was gaining weight. My stomach was getting bigger. You know, I was carrying most of it in my stomach. My face was getting a lot rounder. I noticed it. I noticed that the clothes were getting bigger that I had to buy. And I also was a competitive dancer. Like I was just starting to compete. So I could tell in dance class that I was slowing down a little bit. I couldn't quite keep up like I used to. And then, you know, I tell the story in the book about how my dad made us do this crazy long walk for Thanksgiving every year, 12 miles. And even though it was crazy in Cleveland, 12 miles in the snow, at 7 years old, I didn't struggle with the walk. I mean, I hated it because it was freezing, but I could do it. And then when I was 12 and we were living in the suburbs, he wanted to do that walk, but it was a different version. It was a much shorter version, way easier. And we did the walk, and I cried the whole time because I felt like my body felt heavy. I was struggling going up even the smallest hill. All of it just didn't feel good. So I knew I wanted to try to lose weight. I didn't want to feel like that. But I didn't know how. I was 12. Like, how do you know how to lose weight? You don't. And I didn't have anybody teaching me. The first thing I did was ask my dad if I could work in the restaurant to earn some money, because I kept seeing commercials. Am I allowed to say product name, or you prefer I not?
You can say it, of course.
Okay. So I would see the Slim Fast commercials, right? Yeah. And I was like, you know, it's the beautiful girls and they're skinny and you want to look like the beautiful girls on TV. So I like saved my $5 and I walked to the convenience store down the street when nobody was home and bought it, and I hid it in my drawer under my clothes so like nobody knew that it was there. And I made that first like Slim Fast shake, and it was so gross. Like I remember I took a sip and I was like, gagged. And I was like so determined. I tried another sip and I like couldn't do it. So I sat there on my bed like crying with this canister that I just saved money to buy, and was like, okay, well that's not going to be it because I can't drink one of these, let alone 3 of them a day. So yeah, that was my first attempt at losing weight.
I wanted you to
12.
say the product name because that was the first thing I did too. You know, when I was trying to like get myself healthy, when I had this like realization, this was when I was 22, because I
Okay.
was always like the skinny kid in my family.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'd gained all this weight because, you know, this condition, this spinal condition that I was dealing with. And when I decided to get healthy, that's what I knew because of the commercials, right? Just shake for breakfast, shake for lunch.
And a healthy
sensible
dinner. Sensible dinner. Yes.
Sensible
dinner.
dinner.
That's right.
And man, I had the strawberry.
Yes.
Right? Oh,
So
one
bad.
day, because I had taken it with me to school and it got a little warm.
Ooh.
It's so bad.
Oh, that makes my
Think
stomach hurt.
Pepto-Bismol with a little pinch of honey from bees that have been exclusively fed crack cocaine. It's just like, it was
Oh my
so
God,
bad.
that's such a vivid
It
description.
was so, it just, everything about it was wrong, you
Yeah.
know? And I quickly transitioned away from that, fortunately, you know, because just even the awareness of like, there's got to be something better and
Yeah.
wanting to move towards health. But also it's our exposure. And that's what you were exposed to.
That's what I knew.
And your exposures changed once you moved to St. Louis. Mm-hmm. And this was when you went to live with your mom.
Yeah.
Right? So let's talk about that transition. What was different about living there?
Well, so, you know, my mom, different culture. My mom's not Italian. And my mom definitely had much more of the mentality of exercise and eating right. Not that my dad doesn't have the mentality of eating right. It's just, you know, just different cultures. It was like, hey, this is what we eat. This is what I made. You know, he prepared the foods that he was used to eating. Whereas my mom got up and I saw her exercise every day. And there was always a salad at every dinner, but like not like iceberg salad. It was like spinach and bell peppers and things like that. And she would make the salad dressing. And so living with my mom, I just started eating a little bit different because that's what was in the fridge. That was what was in the house. It was like, well, mom had skim milk, not 2% milk. So, okay, I had to get used to drinking skim milk because that's what was in the house. The snacks were healthier because there was my little brother and sister and she was packing their lunches for school. It was just little things that changed. She had a treadmill in her bedroom. So I would get on her treadmill and walk because that reminder of the fact that I couldn't do that walk with my dad when I was 12 just ate away at me. And I was like, I'm going to be able to walk those, I think it was 5 miles that we were trying to do at that point. And I was like, I'm going to be able to do that. Like, this is ridiculous that I can't. And I actually quickly dropped weight living with my mom, partially because I was coming out the other end of puberty and hormones were probably settling down a little bit. But I was dancing just as much, if not maybe a little bit more, taking dance classes. I was working out with my mom, just running around with my little brother and sister, and I was eating healthier. I was just eating a lot more vegetables and stuff. And I would say a good 12 to 15 pounds fell off me pretty quick. And when I saw my dad 6 months later, it's funny, he didn't tell me this at the time, but when I went home, he was worried that I was developing an eating disorder. So apparently anytime I would eat, if I would go to the bathroom within like an hour of eating, I didn't know it, but he would go listen outside the bathroom because he was worried that I was throwing up or something. I wasn't. It was just, I just was eating different. I was moving more. And so, I remember him telling me about it like a year or two later. And he's like, you came home and, you know, you were skinny and I thought like you weren't eating or you were throwing up. I was like, Dad. And he goes, but I couldn't figure it out because I would watch you eat and you would eat so much food. And he goes, so I thought for sure you must have been throwing up. And he's like, but I would listen. And I was like, are you crazy? I hate throwing up. That is the last thing, not for me. But he just wasn't used to seeing me that way because he didn't realize that the food was such a different quality.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's a crazy story. But that's the thing too. You got crazy throughout the book, so many places. And even the acronym, like that's a part of your amazing brand as well, which we'll get to in a minute. But being at Lafayette, shout out to Lafayette.
Shout out.
High School, Lancers.
Yes.
Gang. But you know, you were dancing, but from there also it wasn't just a straight line because you figured out a lot of things along the way and have been able to impact the lives of hundreds of thousands, millions of people. And a lot of these things were figured out along your own kind of bumpy road and challenges.
Yeah.
And so like going through injuries, going through different trials and tribulations. So getting from like this paradigm of trying to lose weight, trying to be fit, trying to fit this this image of what you wanted yourself to be, and then having things kind of stand in the way, it's something you've been able to do to help other people by understanding the process. So if you can you share, like, when did you have a breakthrough in your thinking about health and wellness? Because even through these processes, as we were younger, we were still just kind of going by what the environment was telling us.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of this actually comes to a change in our psychology.
Yeah. I think it was actually the biggest breakthrough was when I was sort of pregnant with my son, and then right after. I very quickly became aware of, hey, I'm growing a human being. Like, what I eat, he's eating. So I was aware of it during my pregnancy a little bit, but I still during pregnancy wasn't even 100% like on it. I remember having a good month-long period where I craved dairy, and it was like yogurt, cheese, ice cream, and milk. It's like all I wanted to eat, and I sure did eat it. But after I had him, because I was a trainer, I had been training now. I had a specialty in pre- and postnatal fitness. So I remember reading in like the tabloid magazines, like about all these celebrities that would lose their baby weight in like 4 months or less.
The snapback.
And I was like, okay, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And I should do it because I'm the one out there teaching people. So I got to lead by example. Like, probably a little more pressure on myself than I needed, but that's where I was at mentally. So for me, it was really about like, okay, what are you eating, and paying attention to it. And that's when I really started reading more and learning. And it was like, I looked at the breakfast cereal that I ate every morning. I'm just going to call out brand names. You can bleep them out if you don't. I was eating Raisin Bran every morning. Oh my gosh, it has so much sugar.
2 scoops of raisins.
2 scoops of sugar is what it is, right? But I didn't, I'm thinking like, oh, it's whole grain and it's got raisins and it's good for you. Nope, it's loaded with sugar. So I cut out my breakfast cereal that I loved so much because I ate cereal every day, and I switched to like eggs and asparagus and a piece of toast. Something like that was now the breakfast. I looked at those yogurts that I was eating that were named after all the desserts, right? Key lime pie and strawberry shortcake. Right. And I was like, that should be an indication that you're probably not supposed to eat that. And those things I cut out and switched it to like real fruit. So I think after I had Dom was when the real shift started to happen, when I took a deeper dive into learning nutrition through my certifications and recognizing like, oh my gosh, like what is being marketed to us, right? Like, oh, eat a granola bar. It's a great healthy snack. No, it's not.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. Autumn, this is so good. These are the exact, it's just like levels to all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting how growing a human could make you tune in to what's real. You know, it's a very similar thing that happened to us as well. And we were just questioning, like, what we're doing right now, is this the best thing for him? Because we're doing something that is based on a diet trend. Yeah. Like, what do you really need? And just starting to question and ask little different questions. And the 2 scoops of the Raisin Bran thing. So first of all, the marketing though, it's like the Sun had like 2 big scoops. Yes. Like the Sun doesn't have scoops. Yeah. But for us, I know for me it was. For my wife, she had the honey bunches of oats.
Love those too.
Right? Because it's
sometimes I mix them.
It's got the oats. You mix.
I would mix the honey bunches of oats and the Raisin Bran.
Goodness, like I feel a little bit like verklempt. Like I feel a little like uncomfortable.
I loved my cereal. I had all the cereals, all the health cereals. Wow. I had them. I loved them.
And then so for me, I was doing like my little, I guess, treat I would have because it was whole grain, heart healthy was the Honey Nut Cheerios. Yep. Right. So I was knocking that down every night is my thing. And then when I was like, okay, I need to stop eating the, popular brands. I need to get the organic. So I was like getting organic oatmeal squares. It was almost the same amount of sugar, yes. But the marketing, it's like, what's high? It's fiber, yes. But we're starting our day eating processed foods. It's just a shift in our mentality. It's not that these things are inherently, just like with anything in health, like everything kind of has its place, but what is the best thing for humans? Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's so remarkable to hear that story.
I think the biggest thing I remember reading, and this has stuck with me for like, I don't remember when I read it. It's been years, but it was like, if it has to tell you that it's good for you, it's probably not, right? So if they have to say, oh, fortified with fiber, or like, oh, so much vitamin, oh, it's heart healthy. I'm like, well, an apple doesn't say it's heart healthy. You know,
Right.
spinach doesn't have a label telling you like, oh, it's good for fiber, broccoli, you know, like, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. The fact that there's all of this messaging all over a box probably means it's not the right thing.
That's, oh, I freaking love you. That's like, these are things like I really haven't talked about out in open, but I think about. And I also did write a little bit about this that people haven't seen yet, but you know, the marketing behind these things is what really drives it. You know, like it wouldn't be a thing, you know, like stuff in nature doesn't have the marketing campaign behind it. Like, what if Beyonce was like the spokesperson for spinach?
Right.
You know what I mean? And I could see her like doing the dance,
Doing
right?
a dance with
and
a
then
bag
she's
of spinach
like
or
doing
apple.
put a ring on it, but it's like spinach leaves between her fingers. You know what I mean? Like whatever. Or, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger was like the sponsor for, I don't know, freaking avocados. He's
Right.
like, God, guacamole, you know, whatever.
Or like the athletes that are like promoting the drinks or the sodas, right? And you're like, but like, what if they just promoted something that grew out of the ground? Like, would our kids go get that?
Absolutely.
What is the one? Oh, Dominic, my son keeps asking me for this one energy drink. What is it? Oh, I forget what it's called. There's some energy drink that some gamer keeps promoting.
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, Mom, can I have it? And I'm like, are you insane? And he's like, why? And I'm like, it's poison. It is literally, I hype it up. I'm like, it'll kill you. I don't even hold back. I exaggerated a little bit, but it's like, you know, when I start to look at what they're promoting and like the amount of caffeine and things that are in these things, that I'm like, no, Dom. Like, I gave him a sip of coffee like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 months ago. Like a little bit he wanted to try my coffee. He had a little bit, a couple ounces. And his heart started racing. And it freaked him out. And I was like, Dominic, honey, Mommy drinks like basically black coffee. And you had a couple sips. Do you know what you would feel like if you drank that energy drink? You don't need it. But because his YouTuber Fred guy is doing it, gamer, he's like, well, he's 13 and he drinks it. And I'm like, well, shame on his parents.
Right. Listen, those energy drinks the gamers are having, it makes them feel like they're in the game getting shot at.
Right?
That's what it is. You know, it just kind of heightens that feeling of fear and, you know, and focus.
Yes.
That's so crazy. There's so many now. It's just, you know, I remember when it like kind of first became a thing. Like we were in high school actually.
Yeah.
Surge energy drink came to the school.
Yeah.
And they were like giving out free cans.
Yeah.
Like what kind of marketing is that, you know? And I remember like I just got into it. I got into Surge.
Yeah.
And then from there, of course, then the Red Bull came along. All the different energy drinks were from St. Louis. So Nelly and Pimp Juice.
Pimp Juice.
Oh my gosh. You know, and just
love
it's
Nelly.
it's marketing of these artificial process things that like our DNA has never associated with throughout
Has
our
no
evolution.
idea what it is.
And so this is one of the principles that you really bring forward for the folks that you work with. It's not just, and especially for you, it's not like a big calorie focus and just being obsessed with numbers. It's being obsessed, and this is something you like, it's called control freak.
Yeah.
Being obsessed with higher quality, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, so many people, right? They don't like those words. They don't like the word obsessed or control freak. And I love it because I like putting the positive spin on it. Like, here's an interesting question okay, so I don't know if you run into this, but people will like literally like attack me for eating healthy or telling people to eat healthy, right? I literally had somebody tell me the other day that I was teaching disordered eating because I said, instead of eating like the whole pumpkin pie, you know, I was like, oh, shrink it down, have a slice, and that's it. And somebody was like, oh, honey, that's disordered eating, da da da. And I was like, what? But they don't stop to look at overeating or eating of the junk food as disordered eating, right? Like we've come to accept that it's not disordered eating to eat a whole bag of chips, like a full-size bag. I mean, not like an individual size. Right. And I'm like, why do we look at people that eat healthy and go like, oh my gosh, you're a control freak. You don't live, you don't enjoy life. But we look at the person on the other side that's eating the food that's making them sick. And we're like, that's the norm. And you should just do that and live life and enjoy. And I'm like, I don't know what gives anybody the impression that I am not enjoying life or my food, because I enjoy all of it.
Yeah, that's a really powerful insight, because right now, I mean, we're living in a time in culture where we have to worry about the perspective of every single person. And so that creates this paradigm where we're not really being focused on anything sustainable that
Right.
like has a broad spectrum of benefit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because of course we don't want to get in a place where we're shaming anybody. Like it's
Right.
not about that. You can do whatever you want. And that's what you repeatedly say, like, have it, do it, you know. However, you have to understand that everything has a consequence.
Yeah.
And we can't swing all the way to the other side of the pendulum and say, you know, it's okay. It's disorder. It's not disordered eating to do, you know, things like what I used to do, which is, you know, have 3 bowls of cereal every night and a banana, and then wonder why I'm not getting the results that I want.
Yeah.
And then to the other side and say that me making it a priority to invest in high quality ingredients to put in my body, to say that that's disordered eating. Like, where's the rationality here?
Right.
You know, because I think we're so quick to put labels on things today, and we're eating everything that has a label on it. And then we're wondering why we're in this place of just kind of this, again, dystopian reality where, for me, and this is again something that I see in a parallel with you, is just like, let's just get back to what's real. Let's get back to what's natural about us. And another part of that is movement and fitness. And I love your approach because even right now during this time, you give yourself permission. I've been, you know, keeping my eye on you to like do the workout that you feel your body wants right now, you know, like, because we can, right now we're at a time where there's a lot of uncertainty. The certainty is we can do the control freak part of like, I know that I'm going to take care of my body today.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have some flexibility in that and saying, you know what, if I feel I need my spirits lifted, I might do
Dance.
which you made, is it country heat?
Yep.
Right? It's so you might do some country heat. But if you feel like, you know what, today I just feel like I feel aggressive, I feel strong, let me go and lift some weights.
Yeah.
You give yourself permission to do it.
Absolutely. Like, I always have a plan, but I'm not so rigid. I'm not such a control freak in the plan that if my body's like, hey, I need rest today, that I won't give myself the rest or say like, I'm just going to go for a longer walk. One of my favorite things to do, I think probably because the way I grew up with my dad, is to go walk. I will put my headphones on. I will listen to the podcast. I'm always on yours, like listening to the podcast, and I will walk my neighborhood for an hour. I love it. Like, that doesn't even feel like I'm exercising. That's just like for my spirit. That's just for me. Like, I get the sunshine and the fresh air, and I get a little personal development listening to something. I feel like really accomplished at the end of that. But yeah, there are times too where I'm like, oh yes, okay, it's a lift day. Like, it's time to go. But I have the plan. Control Freak, like right now I'm doing Control Freak. We launch it, to the general population in a week. But I love those workouts. But even just the other day, like, I woke up and I was supposed to do one, and I was like, I can't even sit down. I'm so sore. I was like, so that's not going to happen today. I'm going to foam roll. I'm going to stretch. I'm going to flip flop my rest days, and all will be fine in the world.
That's it. I love that. I love that structure, having flexibility within the structure.
Yeah.
So let's dive in more. Let's talk about Control Freak.
Yes.
So to have, and I love this because you're taking a position, you know, and this is why for my show, I want to make sure that we provide a myriad of options. You've helped so many people lose over 100 pounds. You've helped so many people who have been struggling, trying so many different programs to finally be able to get the results that they have been working for. And oftentimes it's these little changes, little small, when you hear their stories, are these little small shifts. It's not anything grandiose.
Yeah.
And I think you're the kind of counterculture to these grandiose, like, diet frameworks that, again, for some people, it is the thing that is a game changer for them. But you have a different perspective on that. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. Look, I think for a lot of people, for most people, extremes are not going to be what works, right? So there's extremes out there and other people are providing that information. That's just not me. That's because that doesn't feel good to me. Like, never eat a carb again. Hello, I'm Italian. I want pizza. Like, I'm going to eat pizza. And no, I'm not eating it on cauliflower crust every time. Like, I'm going to eat the real thing. That's just that. I'm going to drink my wine and not feel bad about it. So for me, it was more about, like, you guys, there was a time where people just ate and they didn't have to worry about, oh my God, am I going to get fat? Oh my God, am I going to get this? Right? Like,
There was a time
there
people
was
just ate?
that they just ate and they didn't worry about it. And they didn't have all these diets and they also weren't overweight. So can we get back to that, right? It's ever since we have really industrialized all the food. When you look at when was fast food introduced and the I think you talked about it in your book, even like the TV dinners, right? Like had your little brownie in there and the mac and cheese one. Salisbury steak was my favorite.
The mushy steak.
The mushy steak was so good.
Oh my goodness.
But like it's been since all of that all of a sudden we need all these quote unquote diets. So it's like, well, what if we just go back to the basics? That's what I try to teach is like, let's just go back to the fruits and the vegetables and the lean proteins and the healthier carbs, the stuff that comes from Mother Nature more often than not. Let's stop loading our shopping carts up with food from the center of the aisles and everything in moderation. I'm not saying don't ever eat ice cream or don't ever eat cookies. It's funny when people are like, oh, well, ultimate portion fix, like I just want a burger. And I'm like, I had one yesterday. What? Eat a burger. What's the problem? Like, where do you see in my work that you can't have a burger? You eat the burger. In fact, I'm going to have a burger for lunch today. That sounds delicious. But, so it's like, that's what I'm trying to teach people is eat the burger. But do you need the burger that has 3 patties and the special sauce and the supersized fries?
I just showed my son a burger today that had a steak and 2 burger patties. It was literally a steak and then like dripping with all these different types of cheeses. So for me, it was just like, oh my gosh, like this is revolutionary to put a steak on the burger. Not a steak burger, like from Steak and Shake.
Right. Yes, we grew up that.
They put a straight up fat steak on the burger with 2 burger patties. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It exists.
And people eat it. I waited tables. First of all, Steak and Shake was the first place I ever waited tables.
What?
Yes.
See, look, that's the vibe we had.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
I did.
Shout out that strawberry shake.
That thing was bomb.
Steak and Shake.
Steak and Shake was good. And those cheese fries. But I also worked at Cheesecake Factory for a long time.
Was this in St. Louis?
Yes, I opened the one in St. Louis.
Oh, which one is that? Was it the Galleria?
The Galleria.
What? Come on. What?
I opened the Galleria. Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
But I remember, I would watch what people would eat there, right? Because let's talk about something that's not portion controlled, their portions. And it would be I remember taking people's orders, and we had the 22-ounce glass. So that would be 22 ounces of soda is what they would start with. And then they'd get the fried egg rolls, and they would eat that themselves. And I'm like, okay, that alone, that much avocado and fried sitting in your stomach is so heavy. I can't even imagine. Then chicken and biscuits. And the chicken and biscuits plate was so heavy. I could only carry that plate in one hand because I swear it must have been at least 6 or 7 pounds, that plate. And then they'd order cheesecake. And I was like, where is that even going? And this was years ago before I was ever a trainer or anything. And I just remember watching and being like, something's wrong with what we're doing here. Something's wrong with the fact that this is how we're eating.
Yeah. A part of this too is like you said earlier, this is this shift and there's these very hyper palatable foods. Mm-hmm. So because in nature, there's this natural inclination, your brain is hardwired to resist any over intake of something of a particular flavor.
Yeah.
Right. It resists it. And a good example of that is even some foods can physically make you stop eating them. There would be a palate shift takes place. Like pineapples, if you start to eat too many, it can actually burn you for some folks.
Because it's acidic, yeah.
And so you shared in the book something really cool, which was a study, I think it was University of Buffalo, that the researchers found, of course, when we talk about your palate changing, right? You going from your dad's environment to your mom's environment. At first, you was damn these bell peppers, but your palate changed. And it's not just I forced myself to like something, literally your taste changed. And so these researchers, and you put this in your book, it's so cool, found that the proteins that we produce actually have this association with flavors and they start to change.
Yep.
What?
My mind was blown. When that study was shown to me, I was like, oh my gosh, because for years you would hear, as a new mom especially, introduce your baby to a food at least 6 to 7 times. Even if they don't like it on the first try, they might learn to like it. That's what we were taught. They would learn to like it. But nobody ever really understood why we would learn to like it. And you're like, oh, it's not because they're just randomly getting used to the flavor.
Okay.
Okay, fine, mom, I'll give in to the broccoli. No. Their proteins in their saliva are changing so that they like it. So that was really interesting to me, that for people that really struggle with vegetables, because that's always the biggest one I hear is like, oh, I don't eat vegetables. Is like, you got to try it, and you got to try it in more than one way. Like maybe you don't like them raw, but maybe you like them sauteed, or maybe you like them baked, or, you know, there's just so many grilled or however different ways to try it before you rule it out.
So this leads us to something that I want to talk to you about, and it's really kind of the highlight of the acronym in your book, Crazy.
Yes.
Use it as an acronym.
Yes.
Just kind of paralleling the crazy upbringing, crazy cool upbringing.
Yes.
And it starts with a different approach. Again, it's not necessarily looking at food in terms of numbers, but having a little bit of control, taking some control over the amounts of food that we're eating, and starting to kind of retrain our biology, right? So can you take us through that acronym starting with the C?
Yeah, the C is control your portion sizes, because we're so all about oversized, supersized, family size for one person. So let's just take those back down to a sensible size. So control your portions.
Why are you doing this? Like, these are things I just don't think of. I literally supersize me every time.
Right?
When I went to the drive-thru, supersize it.
Supersize it, because
Automatic.
I mean, I remember watching the documentary Supersize Me. Yeah. Oh, that poor guy. I was like, wow. Anyways.
Morgan Spurlock.
Yes. That was a hard one to watch. Poor guy got green over the course of 30 days.
My guy, Drew Manning. Do you know Drew Manning?
No.
You don't know Drew Manning? He's doing it right now. So he just gained, I think he's gained about 40 or 50 pounds right now, just eating, processed food.
Ugh.
And it's tough to watch. It's definitely tough to watch. He was Fat Thor for Halloween, this past Halloween. So to see the transformation is pretty remarkable.
Wow.
Okay,
so C, we're controlling our portions. R is just reducing added sugars, because those are so addictive. And that's probably one of the hardest ones for people, is they don't realize how much added sugar they're taking in. I showed these slides in my Ultimate Portion Fix videos where I'm like, the amount of sugar in orange juice is the same that's in a regular Coke, right? Yeah. And you set a glass of orange juice down in front of your kid and you think you're like giving them something healthy, and it's like you just gave them a soda. And it's been processed, so, are the vitamins even still there? So just reduce.
It's fortified.
It's fortified, so you're okay. Well, they put it back. Or you could just eat the orange.
What?
You get the fiber, balance that blood sugar. So reduce added sugars. A is what we're going to add in, which is hopefully a little bit more protein. We tend to be out of balance, right? We're like super carb heavy, but not getting some protein in there. And by the way,
or it swings the other way,
or it does swing with that double burger and steak.
So no, I mean, even
too much protein.
Right. There's a war on carbohydrates.
Right.
Just like a war on fats, and so we're swinging in both.
Yeah.
But the protein is something that doesn't get a lot of attention, and it's so important. Just even building your hormones, like we talked about your flavor. Changing, like those are built on hormones that are built on protein.
And I think what I want to be clear about too is, like, people automatically assume I'm talking about animal protein. I'm not necessarily. Like, I have a whole vegan plan. So like, you don't have to be getting an animal protein. It could be coming from plant-based proteins, but we just need protein. We do need it. And healthy fats. So making sure that it's not an abundance of the unhealthy fats, but that we're getting the good stuff in, the nuts and the seeds and healthy oils, things like that. So we're going to add in, Z is zero deprivation. I am not a fan of that. Like, at no point in your day should you be starving. At no point should you be like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to just have chocolate? Like, you can have that and not feel guilty about it. Let's pick the right kind of chocolate. Like, let's pick real chocolate, not the super processed ones. It's interesting. I used to love me a Snickers. Like, that was like
Snickers.
My favorite. I love the Snickers.
You know what's so crazy? I didn't like nuts in my candy bars. Like who ever ate, and I know some people are gonna be listening, like Mounds. Do you remember Mounds? Like Almond Joy has nuts.
Almond
Mounds
Joys.
Don't.
Yes.
What? Who was eating that stuff? For me, like having shredded coconut in anything was just like, But yeah, so I never ate like a Snickers or like peanut M&Ms. I was so weird.
Oh no.
But what I went ham on was the Three Musketeers.
I like
with
that
the nougat.
Too. Yeah.
What is nougat?
What's in a Butterfinger?
Everything Butterfinger.
But a Butterfinger is so good. Well, so clearly I used to love a good chocolate candy bar. Yeah. I remember a couple Easters ago, like dipping in Dom's Easter basket and taking out like one of those mini candy bars. and eating a mini Snickers and thinking to myself, like, why doesn't this taste right? Like, why doesn't this taste like a Snickers? But because my palate had changed, because I got used to eating like dark chocolate, like good quality chocolate, I could taste the chemicals. And I actually, this is the saddest part, I went back and got another piece because I was like, something must be wrong with that one. Because like you have that good fond childhood memory of like what it's supposed to taste like.
Yeah.
And I ate another one and I was like, that's like, I was a little disappointed. I was like, oh, I don't like those anymore. Like they're not going to bring me the same happiness that they used to.
You see, the siren was going off right
I
at
know.
that time.
Did you hear me try to talk
That's
louder?
The brain is the sirens going off inside. Because I had a similar experience to that. Like this was years ago, but I got my oldest son. He really wanted a certain pizza, and for his birthday, so I got it for like him and his friends or whatever. And I had some of it, and it's just like like the crust. It was just like paste. It just tasted like it's just like this can't be. It doesn't taste all pasty, right?
Right.
But I changed.
Yeah.
My body was just like recognizing something's off about this, and, so in being that that's the case, even with the, the candy bars, Butterfinger, again, this goes back to what you shared earlier with the marketing and the promotion.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Butterfinger spokesperson? Bart Simpson.
Bart Simpson. That's right. It was Bart. He would bite right into that thing.
Yep. Oh my gosh.
And how did they make a cartoon make a candy bar look so good?
That's what they do.
There was something about the way he ate that candy bar that like you're like, I need to bite into one of those right now. But the Z is zero deprivation. And then the Y for at the end of crazy stands for knowing what your why is. And that's important. If somebody's dieting, why are you dieting? What is your ultimate goal? And lean on that, and use that to make your choices. That was something I had to do, especially when I was a fitness competitor. I had to constantly, remind myself of what my goal was during that time when everybody else was drinking and I wasn't because I was so dialed in, or everybody was having dessert and I wasn't. I had to remind myself that I was working towards the goal of taking that stage. So right now, okay, this is the goal. What do you really want it, Autumn, or do you kind of want it? Do you want to get up on that stage and not really be able to actually compete with these other girls because you didn't put in the work, or not? And now I don't eat like that necessarily anymore, that restrictive, but if I've had a glass of wine or two in the week, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to have a glass, I'll think twice about it and be like, what's the goal, Autumn? Why are we having it tonight? Are we having it because we really want it? What I try not to let myself do is have something because of an emotion. Right? So if I'm like, oh, I've had such a bad day, I'm just going to sit on the couch, have a glass of wine, that's the time I actually don't let myself do it because that's the wrong reason. If I want a glass of wine because I'm like, ooh, that glass of Cab just sounds good right now, I'm going to have it. But I try not to make my food about my emotions. That's a big one for me.
There's so many insights that you talk about and that you've helped folks with regarding the management of our emotions and our thought process around food, just around health. And I think that it's important today more than ever because the landscape of things is so different.
Yeah.
And so I want to dive into this and even talk more about the fitness side. Right now, a lot of our structure has been kind of up in the air. And so, number one, what can folks look to do? Because I know a lot of people feel the same way of just even having these conversations. They've gotten a little bit off track because the gym was their sanctuary, or it was just a certain part of their day.
Yeah.
Even for my wife, it was like, drop my son off in the morning, then go to the gym on the way back home, right?
Yeah.
It's just like now everybody being here and just it's been a constant dynamic. She's had to shift from place to place to place in her day to try to find that sweet spot for her. And it's been challenging.
Yeah.
So can you talk about what we can do right now to kind of take back a little bit more control over our movement, which is so important?
Yeah, that's a big one. And yeah, with the gyms closing, or even, some states, depending on where you are, they're open, but maybe you're not comfortable going back to them anymore. This is the beauty of at-home fitness. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have never thought. I was a gym rat. That's where I trained. I trained at the gyms. I loved being at the gyms. Even when I started with Beachbody, I still had my gym membership. I would still go do my workouts at the gym. My workouts that I wrote for people to do at home, I would go do them at the gym because I liked that environment. it's been in the last few years that I've really like embraced how much I love working out at home and how much time it saves me, right? I don't have to drive to the gym. I don't have to park. I don't have to deal with all the like, hey, let's make small talk in between your reps. And I'm like, no, I got stuff to do. So I think just taking back control and embracing being at home, embracing doing your movement at home. You can do it in a really small space. And it's about setting a new routine. We get so stuck in our old routine and the fact that maybe that old routine is gone and maybe we're spending more time dwelling on being annoyed that the old routine is gone instead of redirecting that energy towards, let me just set up a new routine. Yeah. For me, that's been a big one. Like I've had to just set a new routine up and I've just made it very known. Like I get up, I get dressed, I make my breakfast and feed the dog. I get my son breakfast. My assistant comes, and usually as my son is starting school, because like I like him to get started with school, then I go to my workout space and that is my time. It is the first thing I get done really before I do any work for the day. Yeah. That's my happy time, my me time. It puts me in the right mood for the day. It doesn't require a lot. It's 30 minutes. And having that plan, right? Like having something like Beachbody On Demand, having a program to follow that gives you a little bit of structure, I feel like that makes us feel empowered again. When you take even the tiniest little bit of control back, something so small. I tell people all the time, fitness is a metaphor for life. If you can do something hard here, you can do it in the rest of your day too. So like take that moment and start that routine and take back that little piece of control. And then before you know it, you're going to start taking back control of something else and something else. And then the day doesn't feel quite so crazy anymore.
That's so good. That's so good because being control freak, again, it can get this connotation that isn't what it is, which is, and I love it. I love it taking that stance, of course, because I think we need that conversation because for some folks, it's going to be the thing that helps them, but it's taking back, even right now, especially, and you doing what you're doing with this work right now, taking back a little bit of control. Yeah. Because we have, as a culture, outsourced so much of our control, not just of our days and how our lives are structured, but control of our thoughts.
Yes, our minds.
Control of the way that our perception of reality. And simply by being aware of that, we can start to take back control of what we're focusing on. That starts to change what we're doing in our environment. Mm-hmm. And actually in the book, you talk about uncovering for many of us what's holding us back.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, even right now, for people who are struggling to try to just continue to move forward, it's a time where, of course, there's a lot of uncertainty, but I think more than ever, we feel like there's something that's holding us back. Yeah. But for each of us, it's going to be different. For some folks, they might feel a little bit, it might be a different kind of stimuli or situation, but even pre-pandemic times or even post-pandemic times, if there's a post, please. I think for all of us to understand, to really look at what's the thing that why do we keep hitting a wall, right? We get to a certain place and then we end up falling. Yeah. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. The title of that chapter is The Answers Are Already Inside You. And I think that's a big one for people to recognize is if you really stop, you know what's holding you back. It's whether or not you want to admit it. And usually we don't want to admit it because it means that we're going to have to do something big, something uncomfortable, something a little bit scary to change where we're at. And change is uncomfortable. We don't want to do it. So a lot of times we just bury the answer that we already know is the truth. The example that I was using was when I moved to Texas for 5 weeks with my husband. He got a job transfer, and I knew in every bit of my body I didn't want to make that move. But for him, and because I was afraid to say I didn't want to do it once I was there, I was afraid to say I didn't want to be here. Not I didn't want to be with him, I just didn't want to be there. Shout out to Texas, by the way. No hard feelings against Texas. I just wanted to be back in LA. And I explained that story. But there was another story I actually wrote before that one that's not in the book. And the original story I wrote for the book and then took out was knowing that I needed to get divorced. And mind you, my ex-husband is one of my best friends. He's my assistant, you guys. So I don't say this in a bad way, but I knew after several years of he and I working to try to make the marriage work that we weren't going to work as a marriage, as a husband and wife. And I knew it. I knew it for a good year. but I didn't want to say it. It meant my family was going to be broken up. It meant my son wasn't going to have his mom and dad living under the same roof. But all of that impacts us, right? Like when we can't say those things or when we don't say those things, like that starts to impact your health, your mental health. It probably impacts what you do with your food, how you move your body. Because if there's something going on in your life that isn't making you happy or isn't fulfilling you or is holding you back, everything around you gets impacted. So it's scary. But so that's why when I say like, the answer's already inside you. You got to stop. You got to look. You got to answer those hard questions. And when I say be a control freak, it's not white knuckling through life. It's taking back control of what you can, things like your fitness, your nutrition, your rest, your sleep, but it's letting go of the things that are out of our control. So, right, like watching the news right now and my dad again, I'll go back to him. All he does is watch the news all day. And I'm like, Dad, that's not changing. Stop letting it up. He gets so mad. He gets so fired up and he calls me so fired up about it. And I'm like,
it's breaking news, though.
You can't do this is completely out of your control. Why don't you just worry about the things that are in your control? Well, this is ridiculous. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't. It's just an argument I can't have.
But millions and millions and millions of people right now are tuned into the same frequency, you know, and it's so funny to me that, and I'm glad that you're here. We could talk about this. Shout out to your dad, you know, because it's just mirroring what's happening right now. For a while, we started to transition to a place, I think as a culture, we were looking more like, the news is just doing the same old stuff that they've always been doing. You know, they're hyping up situations. They're framing things to keep us in fear. You know, because, you know, if it bleeds, it leads, you know, and that's just the hallmark. I know so many people in media now. Like, I know the people doing, you know, the anchors. I know these people. And it's just a part of the culture. Like, you get something to hook people in. We are so driven by emotion. We think we're logical. Right. We think we're making rational decisions. But the more primitive parts of our brain, the parts of us that have been around longer, they're so primed to fear and to looking for problems. If anybody's wondering, like, why do we tend to focus on the negative and the negative voices or the pushback when we're trying to say something logical and people aren't listening? Why do we tend to focus on the negative and not the positive? So how we're kind of wired up to do that. Yeah. You know, so it's like taking back control of our minds, because right now we're conditioning our society, who are even more so, we abandon the thought of the news is just trying to hook us with fear and keep us inundated. Right. It doesn't even matter. Like, that's gone out the window. Yeah. Matter of fact, the news has tripled, quadrupled down on that. Yes. And I brought this up from the very beginning because I didn't hear anybody talking about it, that they're putting up numbers, the death toll, as if these people are stats and freaking, you know, stock market ticker, you know, like these are people's lives, and framing it just with the primary purpose to show you how bad things are. Which, you know what bugs me about that? And I remember hearing you talk about that, like when you first brought it up on one of your podcasts, and I was like, yes, that's so frustrating. But what's more frustrating is I've never once seen a ticker on how many people have survived. Yeah. How many people have recovered. And I'm like, why? Where's that number? It doesn't lead. Right, because it doesn't. But I'm like, wouldn't that be nice if, like, a guy like my dad who's about to be 70, like, who isn't in the best of health, could just have a little sense of hope of, like, yes, I might be okay. I'm not saying, like, don't be careful or don't be cautious. But I'm just saying, like, wouldn't it be nice if he had just, like, a little bit of hope that if he steps out his front door, he's not going to die? Like, that's where my dad is at. Like, if I'm being totally honest, that's where my dad is at. Absolutely. If he steps out his front door, like, my dad came to my house on Thanksgiving. It's like me and my son with his mask on. And I was like, Dad, my house is clean. Like, what do you take your mask off? Like, how are you going to eat with us if you, like, you pulled it down between bites. No, and he finally did. That was our mandate. I know. You know? And I was like, that doesn't even make sense. Once it's down, it's down. Our governor, you know, the thing that came out, you know, of course, you know, the document with the recommendations, like, literally put your mask on between bites, you know. And it's just like, where are we at with our logic? But more so, you know, like you said, why can't we have stories of hope? And we just had on Bruce Lipton, renowned cell biologist, pioneer in the field of epigenetics, to share with us the biology of fear and what that does to our immune system. Oh. And it's so crazy how all of this fear that's continuously being pumped into our system, and the catecholamines that are produced and the immune suppression, it makes us more susceptible. Why can't we have some framing of hope? And like you said, that folks that are okay, that number would just do a little bit. And by the way, if anybody wants to check it out right now, just Google cases, confirmed cases, and you can look at, they'll have it right there as well, the number of folks who've had associated death with confirmed cases of COVID. Take that number, the death count, and divide that by the number of confirmed cases and see what you get. Just do that for yourself to see what this new term of survival rate. But right now we got about 63 as of this recording, 63 or 64 million confirmed cases and around 1.5 million lives lost. And so when we're looking at 62 million people who are okay, and not to say that there's not long-term side effects for some folks, but it's a tiny percentage. But what you see, they'll put that on the media.
Right.
They don't tell you about the 50% of folks who have zero symptoms at all. And we're in a place today where you are considered sick until proven healthy.
Yeah.
And it's shifted. It has shifted just within a matter of weeks, a matter of months. We've never had this paradigm before where we are making the assumption that everyone is ill until proven otherwise. And just for us to think about, is this okay? What is the long-term ramifications of us viewing life like this? What is the long-term ramifications of our children having this association?
Even in talking about taking back like control, like there's just little things, like there's things that I tried to not go do or avoid. I try to stay in a bubble, not because I'm afraid to go out, but I try to stay in whatever bubble makes me feel the most normal. Because I can tell you, like for me personally, like when in those situations where I feel like I'm being presumed sick until proven otherwise, like I had an annual checkup at the doctor the other day, and like the steps I had to go through to get in the front door of the doctor's office was crazy. I just try to take that control back. Like I try to limit those situations as best I can so that I just have some sense of normalcy. I don't turn the news on. That probably sounds terrible. People are probably like, oh my God, you need to be informed. And I'm like, I get it. I got it. I know where we're at. I understand what's happening. I know what the guidelines are. I'm good. And I'm not saying that to be like selfish, or I'm not saying that to be reckless. I'm just saying that for my own sanity, I have to protect it a little bit. And for my son's sanity, because he's got really bad anxiety, I have to protect it a little bit. So we take back the control just a little.
I think that this is a great segue into something I want to ask you about, because, just as a culture, we seemed like we were going in a direction, like we were progressing as humanity, but then we went backwards. But you even talk about that, is sometimes you have to go back to go forwards.
Yep.
And so it's just like, again, it's a shift in our perspective. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I had so many different experiences in my life that I feel like I was always coming up from behind the eight ball, and I've always had to go back a little bit in order to move forward. I talk about in the book, when I was in college, my ballet master was horrible to me. Like I was just put down on the regular. I didn't have the same training as the other girls in college because of an injury I had when I was a kid with my hip and my lower back. And so it was just like I was the target of abuse. By the time I left college, I didn't graduate. By the time I left, I was so emotionally beaten down that I could not bring myself to go to a dance class for almost 3 years. When I finally moved to LA and I went to the Edge Performing Arts Center, I was here almost a year before I'd even attempted. I would look at the schedule online and I just couldn't go. When I finally went, mind you, I was a dance major. Like this is what I spent 6 hours a day doing at college. I went back to a level 1 jazz class, which if anybody dances, they understand, like that's just dumb for somebody that was majoring in dance. Like I don't belong in a level 1, but that was all I could handle. I had to take a step back. And taking that step back into that level 1 dance class, it gave me a little confidence back. Slowly but surely, the teacher eventually was like, even asked me, like, what are you doing in this class? And I thought he was saying it, my initial thought when he said it was, oh, I suck and he sees that I suck, like, and he's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, you need to be in the advanced class. They're coming to the advanced class at night. This class is beneath you, basically. And I was like, okay, so that was my step forward to regaining my confidence. But I needed that. I needed to take that step back. And I think people need to know that it's okay sometimes. Like all these people, like we start diets or we start an exercise program and maybe we struggle with it or we feel like we didn't do the best. And so we give up. And instead of just going back a few steps, we just quit. And maybe it's like you don't have to quit. You just have to dial it back a little bit. Start over. Try again. Build your confidence up one step at a time. But we're really hard on ourselves and we don't like to do that. We'd rather sort of make up all the excuses and oh, that program's dumb or that didn't work or that's not for me. And it's like, it's okay to say, hey, I feel defeated, but I'm going to try again. But maybe I got to start a level below where I was before.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. That's so, it's so affirmative for right now, you know, because I think a lot of folks feel like they're going in one direction with their lives and suddenly, you know, all bets are off. And collectively, I think, again, I've said this from the beginning, I think we can learn a lot right now. You know, we can learn a lot about ourselves. We can learn a lot about our society as a whole, because I think, no, I know many of us were living under an illusion of how things are.
Yeah.
But in reality, there are these festering issues that have just been plaguing humanity for so long and just getting worse and worse. But we accepted them as normal. So this has really come along and shaken things up. And I think we have to stand up and demand. And this is like going back to what you said. It's like not making excuses. We have to stand up and demand what world we want to create right now.
Yeah. I hope that what's happening right now ends up being a really big health revolution. Like, I hope that people start to realize that their health is in their hands. Like you said, we've outsourced so much. Like, we don't even stop to think that we have any control over our health. It's only what doctors say. And don't get me wrong, we love our doctors and we need our doctors, but like, it's only what our doctors say. And we're okay with everything that's in our food. We don't question it at all. We don't question why, you know, Kraft has to make it one way for Europe, but they make it a different way for us. And you're like, because those ingredients are banned there. And if they're banned there, shouldn't they be banned here, you guys? Like, so I'm hoping that it starts to wake people up to like, whoa, I've got to take better care of myself. And we start demanding more from our food. We start demanding the ability to being able to have time to exercise. We demand time to sleep, right? Like, they're saying people are working more now than ever.
Right.
Like, because you're working from home and you're not turning off the electronics. Like, I hope we start to demand, like, I'm done at 5 o'clock or I'm done at 6 o'clock. I'm going to have family time. I'm going to start making my food again. Like, all these things. So, you know, it could go either way. But I really hope it goes towards the positive.
But this is the time right now.
It's crazy. I never could have imagined.
Even if you have a crazy life, lose weight like crazy, can you let everybody know what they're going to find inside of these pages and also where they can find the book?
Yeah, you guys, I mean, the biggest thing is you're going to see that I'm just normal like everybody else. I've had hard times in my life and I've just worked to overcome them. And I'm teaching the little steps that they're not really tricks. They're just steps to overcoming things. You're going to find a nutrition plan that's accessible to everybody, that's doable, it is not a diet. It's a nutrition plan. It's just a way of eating for life. You're going to find some really amazing recipes in there. You're going to find 2 great workouts that you can start to follow at home if you're looking for something to do. And if they're looking for more from me, they can find me on Instagram. It's at Autumn Calabrese. They can check out the website, autumncalabrese.com. And 9-week Control Freak is coming. So perfect thing to start taking back control long before the new year hits. Like, let's do it now.
Yes.
Let's not wait.
So good. And the book is going to be where?
The book is, you can get it on Amazon or at any of your local bookstores. Lose weight like crazy, even if you have a crazy life.
Awesome.
Yes.
Autumn, you're the best. This was fun.
Thank you. So much fun.
Autumn Calabrese, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into the show today. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. So many great takeaways from this episode. And one of the big ones for me is redirecting our attention and our intention, and to remember that the answers are already inside of us. Just like Autumn talked about today, we already know what the solutions are. We already know the things that we, quote, should be doing for us to get to the destination that we want to be at in our lives. Regardless of what's going on in the world, there is always an opportunity for us to grow, for us to have happiness, for us to have a success. You know, it's still available, and the answers are inside of us already. And it's just shifting our attention and starting to ask higher quality questions, asking better questions of ourselves. And for me, I want to direct you guys again to think about this. What is this challenge trying to teach me? All right, what is this time in human history? What qualities are wanting to be developed in my life? Right? Asking ourselves these questions. You know, it might come up that I really needed to practice more patience, or I needed to practice and cultivate more strength and resolve in my life, and being able to have courage amidst pushback. Maybe you're somebody who didn't like to not have people not agree with them, you know, and just knowing that this time in history, there's a lot of turbulence. And it seems like folks can be picking a side when in reality for us, I know a lot of folks listening right now, we're picking the side of humanity. We're not picking a side. We're on the side of humanity. And maybe seeing resistance to that, you might kind of ball up and hide out in your shell, you know, and get your turtle on, right? More of a turtley disposition when we need to cultivate more courage right now. So whatever quality that might be, just asking, you know, because even though it's a challenging time, it can be developing right now qualities that are going to help you to not just make it through this, but to create the life that you're truly here to live. All right. So oftentimes the challenges that we're faced with are there to help us to be a better version of us. So again, the answers are already inside of us. We just need to redirect our intention and our attention within ourselves, because there's so much external chaos happening. And I love that she brought up that point today. And also controlling what we can control, right? There's obviously a lot of things that we even thought were in control. We thought they were in control. They're not. All right. There are only a few things in our lives that we truly have control over. The first being, again, our own mind and our own thoughts. We have the ability to think what we want to think, to believe we want to believe, to have the perspective that we want to have. Unfortunately, we outsource that. We give our power away. We provide that ability to think for ourselves to somebody else, and oftentimes we don't even realize we're doing it. And we're doing that when we allow, you know, entities that are geared towards, as we talked about today, they're designed for the sole purpose of keeping you addicted to fear. They're designed for the sole purpose of keeping you addicted to things that make you controllable and easily manipulated, right? In between all the messages that we need to have all of these things to make us complete, right? They're messages for their, you know, various, you know, this car is going to complete you. You just need the Buick. Shaq got the Buick. Shaq doesn't drive a freaking Buick, but Shaq's got the Buick, right? We just need that drug. I just need that drug. All of the side effects they're listing for 2 minutes on the commercial, that doesn't matter. The drug is going to help me so that I can sail a boat, because the guy on the commercial sailing a boat, I always want to sail a boat and be happy. All right. All immersed. It's all happening, right? This is the name of the game. But when we realize these things and start to take back control of our attention and focusing it on the things that are going to keep us empowered and uplifted, we can be informed, but we don't have to be inundated. All right. And we get to choose the inputs, because it's not just the food that you eat. It's not just you are what you eat. It's not just you are what you drink. It's not just you are what you breathe. It's you are what you think. It's you are what you think. And we get to control, because these inputs we're taking in from the world around us is feeding us. It's feeding our minds. And it's called programming. Television programming. All right, it's never been more true. So you're going to get programmed. Nature is going to program you. Life is going to program you. What do you want those programs to be? All right. So just a really great conversation to have and things to think about. But most importantly, what are we going to do about it? And it's all about action. So make sure to check out Autumn and her incredible work. Follow her on Instagram. She's one of my favorite people. And again, shout out to Homegrown St. Louis. Shout out to the Midwest. Shout out to everybody in Cleveland. And shout out to everyone around the world who's tuning in right now, who's choosing to tune into things that are going to keep you empowered, to remind you of how powerful you are to affect change in your life and the world at large. I appreciate you so much. We've got some epic shows coming your way very soon, so make sure to stay tuned. Take care, have an amazing day, and I'll talk with you soon. Hey, if you want to optimize your mind and your body and even extend your lifespan, make sure to check out this video right here.
I can actually tell you how old you are biologically, and I can predict with high accuracy when you're going to die, almost to the month.
Wow, that's nuts.
It's scary, right? I haven't had it done. Would you get your clock done?